The jungle of Zaloris was never quiet. It whispered with the rustle of giant leaves, the distant calls of unseen birds, and the deep rumble of predators moving through the undergrowth. But today, the air was different. The trees stood still. Even the insects were silent. It was the kind of silence that warned you something dangerous was near. Captain Raylan Cross stepped off the transport skimmer and onto the black soil. The air was heavy with the smell of wet earth and strange flowers. Behind him, the pilot shook his head. "You're crazy for coming here alone," the pilot muttered. "The Bloodfang doesn't leave survivors." Raylan only adjusted the strap of his shock rifle. "Good thing I'm not here to be a survivor." And then he walked into the trees, up above, hidden among the thick vines. Saranya watched him. Her silver-white hair caught the faint light filtering through the canopy, her crimson skin blending with the shadows. She had seen many warriors try to hunt the Bloodfang. None had returned. This human would be no different. The deeper Raylan went, the darker it became. Towering plants with glowing veins pulsed faint light. Large roots twisted across the path like the backs of sleeping serpents. He moved silently, scanning the ground for signs. A broken branch, a heavy footprint, a splash of blood. The blood. Fang left marks when it wanted to be found, and none when it didn't. Somewhere to his left, a low growl rolled through the air. Raylan froze. The sound was deep, too deep to be any normal predator. He kept moving, slow and deliberate, each step quiet. His heart beat steady. A faint trail of claw marks appeared on the trunk of a massive tree. Deep cuts, 3 across, each as long as his forearm. Fresh, Raylan smiled faintly. He was close. Saranya shifted on her branch. This was madness. The Bloodfang wasn't just a beast. It was the jungle's apex killer. Muscles like steel cables, jaws strong enough to crush bone in seconds, claws that could rip through armored plating. The elders said it was faster than a skyhawk and smarter than most hunters. And yet, here was this human, moving as if he was tracking a deer. The silence deepened. Even the wind stopped moving. Raylan felt the air change, heavier, hotter. It was here. From the shadows ahead, two pinpoints of light appeared. Not sunlight, not reflections, eyes glowing, blood-red eyes. They didn't blink, they didn't move. Raylan lifted his rifle but didn't fire. He wanted the beast to come. Closer, a shape emerged from the gloom, massive and terrible. Green hide covered in scars, shoulders as broad as a cargo hauler, a mane of dark spines running down its back. Its fangs caught the dim light, dripping with saliva. The blood-fanged it stopped 10 steps away, muscles rippling under its skin. The low growl rose into a deep, vibrating snarl that made the ground tremble. Saranya's breath caught. Most hunters would have fired by now, hoping to get lucky before the beast charged. But Raylan didn't move. His eyes stayed locked with the creature's. The Bloodfang stepped forward, each footfall making the soil sink. Raylan adjusted his stance, shifting his weight. His finger rested on the trigger. But he was waiting, reading its movements like a book. The beast's tail flicked to the side. Its claws flexed. Then it lunged. Raylan dropped to one knee, the swipe passing inches above his head. His rifle barked once, sending a shock bolt into the beast's shoulder. The Bloodfang roared, the sound so loud it made the trees shudder. But instead of running, it turned back instantly, faster than Raylan expected. One massive paw swung at him, the claws tearing through the strap on his shoulder. His rifle fell into the dirt. Serenia leaned forward, heart pounding. Without his weapon, the human was finished. Raylan didn't reach for the rifle. Instead, he rolled to the side, grabbing a jagged piece of root as thick as his arm. The beast came again, and Raylan jammed the root into its open jaws. The bloodfang bit down, splintering the wood, but the moment was enough. Raylan slipped behind it, dodging the deadly claws. The beast spun, furious. Its tail lashed out, striking Raylan in the chest. The impact sent him flying into a wall of ferns. Pain exploded through his ribs, but he was still moving, still thinking. He grabbed the rifle from the ground just as the bloodfang charged again, the earth shaking under its weight. Raylan lifted the weapon, but before he could fire, the beast slammed into him, knocking him backward. They crashed together into the edge of a dark river. Water splashed high as they tumbled in. For a moment, both disappeared under the surface. The jungle fell silent again. Serenia stared at the water, her breath quickening. No one ever came back from that. And then, through the mist, a shape rose from the current, but whether it was man or monster, she couldn't yet tell. The river's current dragged Raylan downstream, cold water crashing into his face. His lungs burned as he kicked toward the surface. Beside him, a massive shadow swam with terrifying speed. The bloodfang was still coming. He broke the surface with a gasp, only to see the creature rise from the water a few meters away. Its scarred hide dripped, its glowing eyes locked on him. Even in the river, it moved with power, claws slicing the current. Serenia stayed hidden in the trees along the riverbank. She had followed the fight, curiosity pulling her closer. People would never go near the bloodfang in water. It was said to be even deadlier here, and yet the human did not run. Raylan's feet found the muddy riverbed. He shifted his stance, water swirling at his waist. The beast lunged again, jaws snapping, sending waves crashing into him. He dodged left, feeling the air move from the creature's strike. The riverbank was steep and slippery, but Raylan began moving sideways, forcing the predator into shallower water. It followed, snarling, each step deliberate. He was reading it, watching how it blinked, how its muscles tensed before a strike. The beast lunged for his head. Raylan ducked, slamming the butt of his rifle into its jaw. A dull crack echoed over the water. The bloodfang roared and thrashed, sending spray high into the air. Serenia's eyes widened. She had seen warriors attack it before. They used brute force and died. This human fought differently. He was not just strong, he was patient. The beast charged again, jaws wide. Raylan fired point blank into its chest. The shock bolt burst against its hide, making it stumble back, dazed but not defeated. That moment was all he needed. Raylan leaped forward, grabbing the thick mane of spines along its neck, swinging himself onto its back. The bloodfang bellowed, twisting and snapping at him, but he held on with one arm, while his other hand reached for his belt. A small device, a shock harness, meant for restraining dangerous animals. He slammed it onto the beast's neck, pressing the trigger. Electricity arced across the bloodfang's body. It roared, its entire frame shuddering. Raylan expected it to collapse, but instead the creature spun violently, throwing him off into the mud. Before he could recover, it pounced. Its massive paw pinned him down, claws inches from his throat. Its hot breath hit his face, reeking of blood, and the wild Serenia tensed, ready to leap from the trees, though she knew it would be suicide. Raylan didn't fight back. He stayed, perfectly still, looking straight into the predator's eyes. The beast's growl lowered, more like a deep rumble now. Its claws pressed against his chest, but it didn't strike. For the first time, the blood fang hesitated. Slowly, Raylan moved his hand to the device on his belt, not to use it, but to unclip it. He placed it on the ground, showing the predator. He wasn't going to hurt it again. The beast's breathing slowed. Its head tilted slightly, as if studying him. Then, without warning, it lifted its paw and stepped back. Serenia's jaw tightened in disbelief. She had never seen the blood fang spare anyone. Raylan got to his feet, mud dripping from his armor. He didn't smile or celebrate. He just nodded at the creature, like two warriors acknowledging each other. The jungle seemed to breathe again. Birds called. Leaves rustled. But before the tension could fade, a distant sound cut through the air. A horn. Raylan turned toward the trees. Serenia's heart sank. She knew that sound. The hunters were coming, and they would kill anything. In their path, man or beast. The horn echoed again, this time closer. Raylan's eyes narrowed. He had heard that sound before, in Watums. It was the signal of a hunt, not for food, but for trophies. Serenia moved through the trees, her steps silent. She knew the hunters. Who used that horn? The Scare Tribe's killers, who wore the skulls of their prey as armor. They had been after the blood fang for years, hoping to claim its hide as the ultimate prize. Raylan glanced at the massive predator beside him. The beast's ears twitched, catching the approaching footsteps. Its muscles tensed, ready to fight or flee. Not yet, Raylan whispered to it, as if the creature could understand. He turned toward the jungle, his mind already working. The Scare wouldn't fight fair. They would come with nets, energy, spears, and numbers. He needed an edge. Raylan moved quickly, gathering thick vines, broken branches, and sharpened stakes. He began tying traps between trees, hiding them under fallen leaves. The blood fang watched him, head tilted, as if curious about the strange human rituals. Serenia, still unseen, frowned. Why is he wasting time? She thought. Every moment spent. Tying vines brought the hunters closer. But as she looked again, she saw the clever placements, a tripwire at ankle height, a dead branch balanced to fall like a spear. A vine loop set to yank a man into the air. The sound of voices carried through the undergrowth, harsh, guttural. Raylan froze, then crouched low, motioning for the beast to stay hidden. The blood fang sank into the shadows, its green hide, melting into the foliage. Through the trees, the hunters appeared. 7 of them, tall, lean, and armored in bone plates. Each carried a long spear tipped with glowing blue blades. Their leader had a skull helm shaped like a predator's head. They moved in a loose line, scanning the jungle. One stopped, sniffing the air. Human, he growled in their language. Close. Raylan didn't breathe. The first hunter stepped forward, and his leg caught the vine. In a flash, a sharpened branch swung down from above, smashing into his shoulder. He roared in pain, stumbling back. The others shouted, weapons up. That's when the blood fang struck. It burst from the shadows like a storm, knocking one hunter to the ground and crushing his spear in its jaws. Another tried to stab it, but Raylan's shock rifle cracked, dropping him where he stood. Chaos filled the clearing. Hunters tangled in vines, weapons ripped from their hands. Raylan moved fast, using the traps to split them apart, never staying in one place. Serenia's breath quickened. She had seen the blood fang fight before, savage, unstoppable, but the human was different. He didn't just attack. He planned every move, controlling the battlefield like a game. One of the hunters broke through, charging straight at Raylan. His spear tip glowed bright, ready to pierce armor. Raylan ducked, grabbed the man's arm, and twisted, sending him crashing into a hidden pit lined with spikes. Only 2 hunters remained, backing toward the trees. The Bloodfang growled low, eyes fixed on them. But Raylan raised his hand. Let them run. The beast paused, and, after a long moment, it stepped back, allowing the last 2 to flee into the jungle. The fight was over, but Raylan knew it wasn't finished. The scare didn't forget, and they didn't forgive. The Bloodfang padded closer, standing beside him like a silent ally. Raylan rested his hand on its scarred neck. "We're not done yet, friend," he muttered. From the shadows, finally stepped forward, her eyes locked on his. "You are unlike any human I've ever seen," she said softly. Raylan only smiled faintly. "You've seen nothing yet." But deep in the distance, another horn blew, longer, louder, and this one meant war. The jungle held its breath again. That long, deep horn still echoed in the distance. It wasn't the call of 7 hunters anymore. This was the rally for all of them. Saranya's face darkened. "They're bringing the war band," she said. 50, maybe more. "They won't stop until you're dead, and the Bloodfang's hide is on their walls." Raylan didn't answer at first. His eyes scanned the trees, his mind already moving ahead. Running wasn't an option. If the hunters cornered them, there would be no escape. He turned to the Bloodfang. The beast was still, its massive chest rising and falling slowly, eyes fixed on him. They had fought side by side now. A thin thread of trust had formed. Not much, but enough. "All right, big guy," Raylan muttered. "Time to show them this jungle isn't theirs." Sarenya tilted her head. "You're talking to it." He didn't answer. Instead, he crouched in front of the predator, holding its gaze. Slowly, he reached for his belt and pulled out a small pouch. Inside were silver-gray cubes, scent charges. Hunters used them to mark prey. Raylan had taken them from the dead scare. He cracked one open and smeared the strange glowing powder onto his armor. Then, in a bold move, he pressed the rest against the Bloodfang's thick mane. Saranya's eyes widened. "You're marking yourself." "As prey," Raylan smiled faintly. "Not prey, bait." The Bloodfang's ears twitched, catching the far-off movement of dozens of boots. Raylan stood, stepping closer to the beast. He placed his hand firmly on its neck, not as a master, but as an equal. When the first shadow moved between the trees, the predator growled. Raylan leaned closer, whispering, "We charge on my mark." The warband appeared like a wave, 50 hunters in bone armor, spears glowing like molten metal. Their leader raised his weapon and pointed at Raylan. "Kill the man. Take the beast." Raylan raised his voice so the entire jungle could hear. "Come and try." Then he slapped the Bloodfang's shoulder. The creature exploded forward, a blur of muscle and fangs. Raylan ran beside it, rifle up, every shot timed with the beast's leaps. Hunters fell left and right, tangled in the chaos of man and monster. Moving as one, Saranya stayed in the shadows, loosing arrows into those who tried to flank them. She had never seen such a fight. It was like watching 2 storms merge into one. A massive hunter leaped at Raylan, swinging an axe. The Bloodfang's jaws clamped down on the man's torso, hurling him aside like a rag doll. Another tried to stab the beast from behind, but Raylan was there first, blasting him into the dirt. The warband broke into smaller groups, trying to surround them. Raylan shouted a sharp command, and the Bloodfang obeyed, turning to crash. Through their lines, scattering them again, Saronia realized something shocking. The beast was following his lead, not out of fear, but choice. After minutes of brutal fighting, the survivors began to retreat, dragging their wounded into the trees. The horn sounded again, shorter this time, a signal of defeat. The jungle fell quiet, except for heavy breathing. Raylan stood with the Bloodfang at his side, both covered in mud, blood, and sweat. "You didn't just fight it," Saronia said, stepping forward slowly. "You claimed it." Raylan glanced at the predator. The beast met his gaze and gave a low rumble, not a growl, but something almost like acknowledgement. "We claimed each other," Raylan corrected, but before they could catch their breath, a deep rumble rolled through the ground. Trees shook. In the far distance, a shadow even larger than the Bloodfang moved between the canopy. Saronia's voice dropped to a whisper. "That is its mate." Raylan's eyes narrowed. "Guess. We're not done yet." The ground shook harder with every step. From the misted jungle ahead, the second predator emerged, larger than the Bloodfang, with darker scales, jagged scars across its muzzle, and eyes burning a deep amber. Its roar made the trees quake, sending flocks of alien birds screaming into the sky. Saronia's breath caught. "The mate," she whispered. "It will kill everything in its path to protect its own." Raylan stayed still, rifle lowered. He knew aiming it now would only trigger an attack. The Bloodfang moved forward instead, standing between Raylan and the new arrival. Its muscles were taut. But it wasn't challenging. It was speaking in the language of predators. The larger beast's eyes shifted to Raylan, then back to its mate. It gave a low growl, almost questioning. Raylan took a slow step forward, hands open, showing no threat. "You want to protect it," he said softly, more to himself than the creature. "And I'm the reason it's still alive." Saronia stayed hidden in the leaves, her bow half drawn. Her instincts screamed to run. But something in the stillness between the two predators made her wait. Then, before anything could shift, the jungle erupted with sound. The scare hunters were back, not 50 this time, but 100. They poured from the trees in a wave of bone and steel, screaming war cries, spears glowing like molten fire. The mate's head snapped toward the noise, and in an instant, the calm was gone. The Bloodfang and its mate roared together, the sound like a thunderclap. The hunters hesitated for the briefest moment, and that was all Raylan needed. "Now," he shouted. The Bloodfang charged left. The larger mate crashed right. Raylan ran between them, firing into the center line of the scare, breaking their formation. Hunters were thrown, trampled, shredded in seconds. The jungle became a storm of movement, fangs, claws, and shock fire. The two predators fought like one body, driving the hunters into disarray. Raylan moved between them, covering blind spots, taking down any enemy that slipped past the beasts. Saronia finally emerged from cover, her arrows flying with deadly accuracy. She stayed close to Raylan's flank, protecting his back. One of the scare leaders, wearing an enormous horned skull as a helm, leaped forward with a double-bladed spear aimed for Raylan's chest. But before the blow could land, the larger predator lunged, grabbing the hunter in its jaws and tossing him into the trees like a rag doll. The battle raged until the ground itself became slick with churned mud and blood. The scare, seeing their numbers shattered, began to retreat, dragging their wounded. But Raylan wasn't done. He fired a final warning shot into the air, Tell your people, he shouted at the fleeing survivors, the jungle belongs to them now. He pointed at the two predators, who stood side by side, their eyes glowing in the dim light. You come back, you don't leave. Silence fell. The warband was gone. The only sound was the slow, deep breathing of the two great beasts. The larger predator turned to Raylan. For a long moment, it studied him, then lowered its head slightly, a gesture of recognition. The blood fang rumbled in approval. Saranya stepped closer, shaking her head in disbelief. You've done more than tame them. You've made them your allies. Raylan looked out at the battered jungle, the steam rising from the ground. Not mine, he said quietly. We just fight for the same home now. Far above, a strange red glow flickered in the clouds, a sign of incoming ships. Bigger ones, and whoever they belonged to. The jungle wasn't ready for them. The red glow in the clouds grew brighter. Saranya's eyes widened as the shapes emerged. Massive dropships, their hulls painted black with crimson war symbols. These were not the Scare. These ships belonged to the Krith Dominion. A force that conquered entire planets, not just hunted on them. Raylan felt the ground tremble as the first drop pods slammed into the jungle, sending waves of dirt and leaves into the air. The pod's doors hissed open, revealing tall figures in jagged armor, their faces hidden behind silver masks. Each carried heavy plasma cannons that could rip a beast apart in seconds. They're here for the same reason as the Scare, Sir whispered. But they don't want the hide. They want the whole planet. The blood fang and its larger mate stood side by side, snarling, their tails whipping the ground. The new arrivals didn't flinch. They moved in perfect formation, their weapons already glowing hot. Raylan checked his rifle, then glanced at Sir. You said they're here for the planet. Then we give them a reason to leave it alone. Before she could reply, the first plasma bolts streaked through the air, tearing trees apart. Raylan dove to the side, rolling behind a thick root as the predators charged into the enemy line. The impact was brutal. Armor shattered, soldiers screamed. The jungle itself seemed to roar with them. Raylan fought alongside them, using every scrap of cover, every moment the beasts brought him. Arrows found weak points in the Krith armor, striking with perfect precision. The battle was fiercer than any before. The Krith didn't retreat. Even wounded, they fought with cold, mechanical discipline. Raylan realized these weren't just soldiers, they were trained exterminators. But the predators refused to fall. The larger mate tore through a line of soldiers, while the blood fang leaped onto a drop pod, ripping its mounted cannon free and hurling it into the trees. Raylan saw an opening and sprinted toward the remaining pods, planting explosive charges from his belt. Saranya, he shouted. Tell them to move. She whistled sharply, a sound that cut through the chaos. The beasts broke away just as Raylan detonated the charges. Fire ripped through the clearing, dropods splitting open in a rain of metal and flame. The surviving Krith pulled back toward their remaining ships. The Bloodfang and its mate gave a final earth-shaking roar, a sound that would carry for miles, and the enemy ships lifted off, vanishing into the red clouds. Silence returned, broken only by the crackle of burning wreckage. Raylan stood in the center of the clearing, the two predators at his side. Saranya beside him. She looked at him with a strange mix of awe and fear. In one day, you have done what no one in this jungle has ever done. You are not just a hunter. Now, you are part of its legend. Raylan glanced at the two great beasts. They stood tall, their eyes glowing in the fading light. Then let's make sure this legend protects the jungle for a long time. But just as they turned to leave, a shadow moved high above the canopy, far larger than any ship they had seen before. A colossal vessel, its hull bristling with weapons, descending slowly through the clouds. The Bloodfang growled low. Its mate shifted uneasily. Serenia's voice dropped to a whisper. That is not the Krith. Raylan's hand tightened on his rifle. Then I guess the legends. Just getting started.